We're covering 10 players that you need to get in 2023 fantasy football to help build your rosters, to help you win your drafts, to help you get ready for the 2023 NFL season. And we're doing this every day to get you ready for the middle rounds of the draft, those top tier players, those breakout players, those guys who've gone unnoticed. We're covering them all. And we're covering 10 today. So let's take a look at what's available. Before we do, you have to click that subscribe button right now. Give it a good click with the mouse. Tap with the finger on your phone, whatever you need to do, because we're covering these players every day. You don't want to miss out on your favorite player. You don't want to miss out on rookie talk or breakout players or sleepers. They're going to be here. And then when we're talking waiver wire, we're going to be here telling you who to pick up and who could break out and who you need for a deep league, who you need for a shallow league, and everything else. Talking a lot of strategy as well. Click that button right now. Stop missing out or you're going to lose your league. Let's go here, though. Let's start things off. So first things first, we're going to be looking at Joe Mixon. RB13 in ADP. Got 60 balls last year, career high. And Samaje Perine is gone, which vacates 51 targets. Plus, he's on the Bengals offense. Plus, he's proven to be productive. Averaged over 17 points per game last year. Solid in PPR. And you're catching him at a high-end RB2 price tag at RB13 per underdog fantasy ADP, which is a solid price tag to get considering he's a consistent, stable talent here that you can get at the running back position. And that causes you or allows you to be able to get your wide receiver early, be able to draft that player, and maybe get another one, depending on how your draft flows, more than likely one, and then get a running back or get two running backs. This allows you some flexibility if you're looking at Joe Mixon, or if he falls to you. Say he falls to you at RB15 or something like that, and you're wondering about him. Now you know we got some opportunity in offense. Don't forget about Joe Burrow and company. Don't forget that he's proven to be productive. Don't forget about that stuff. It's all fluid. Sometimes these players fall a little bit farther. Sometimes they go a little higher than expected. But the thing about his price tag is you can get a good wide receiver. You can get him as your anchor running back if you're going hero RB. He's a guy that can allow you some flexibility due to where he's going in drafts. He can really help out your team, help out your build, and really give you some production. The next guy we're looking at here is Chris Olave. Wide receiver 12 in ADP. Barely a wide receiver 1. But when healthy, he gave you wide receiver 10 in efficiency. Has been productive. Had some injuries last year, but broke out last year too. As a rookie, we should expect him to take a bump in production here in year 2 and to see what goes on here with Chris Olave. Chris Olave here with Derek Carr too under center. Very interesting to see what happens here, but I imagine it's going to be deep ball city. I imagine there's going to be air yards galore, and I imagine he's going to get plenty of opportunities. As long as he's healthy on the field, seeing consistent targets, Chris Olave is going to be good to go. Next, we're looking at Nick Chubb, RB4 and ADP. Kareem Hunt's gone, which means more touches to go around. They have nothing but jabroni backs behind them. This offense should be cooking more with Deshaun Watson with a full year now. With the offense, Elijah Moore's there. They're going to be able to cook a little bit more in this offense, and he has proven to be productive. 16.5 points per game over the last 3 years with plenty of RB1 performances. You see the chart down there? You see those green candlesticks? Those are RB1 weeks. Consistent producer. The price tag's up there, but it's worth the price of admission because as long as he's healthy on the field, should be in line to get you some good production. And I don't see why not this year. Everything's in line for him to be a solid back for you. Everything's in line for him to be productive, to be good. The only thing you can worry about is injury, but you're going to worry about that with every running back. That's the only way he can fall on you. They're going to give him touches. He's going to be on the field. They'll probably use him in checkdowns a little bit more. There'll be more opportunity galore in this offense. Offense is going to move the chains more red zone opportunities. Nick Chubb is a player that you need to pay a premium for. Next is Christian Watson, wide receiver 22 in ADP. I've not talked about him that much this offseason, so I figured today was going to be a good day. 125 air yards per game between weeks 10 and 13. That was when you saw him spike up there in production. Injuries prevented him to have a full season last year. He was just in the lineup off and on. But he did have his moment there for 4 weeks where he's one of the best wide receivers in football when it comes to production. We know Aaron Rodgers is gone. Jordan Love stepping in. What's his offense is going to look like? He looked okay in preseason, but we need a large sample of games. That creates a question mark. That also creates a mystery box for Christian Watson where there could be some upside here. There could be some downside too. So you're really taking a boom-bust approach with this player. We could also see the passing volumes decrease a little bit. After all, they got 2 good running backs. They can pound it out a little bit more and really mitigate the damage if Jordan Love can't handle slinging the rock 30 to 40 times a game. They can really slow things down, which could impact the wide receivers. You also got Jaden Reed there now taking targets. This is going to be an interesting wide receiver depth chart to watch over the season. But if you want to buy in, you're buying them at wide receiver 22. The upside is there. You see it in those 4 weeks last year. That could be the whole season or a large part of the season, or it could not be. But you are paying for that, and you're getting a decent price tag. A year 2 wide receiver could come into his own. Air yards at least from game to game. Hoping that he connects with one of those, brings down one of those deep targets, and really scores you some fantasy points. Here we're talking about Devonta Smith, wide receiver 13 ADP. I have talked about him a few times this year. 27% target share, 31% share of the air yards, 15th in targets last year. He's getting the workload as a top-end wide receiver in fantasy, but you're buying him as a top-end wide receiver too, which is solid. So that means he's going to have you some top-end spike weeks, and you may see some volatility because you got A.J. Brown there. You got some weapons in the offense. Jonathan Taylor's been linked to this team, so they're still building and adding weapons to this team, or at least want to. Devonta Smith, though, is good. Good route runner, good ball skills, gets downfield, good at Alabama, transitioned well to the NFL game. There's nothing really to worry about him. As long as he's healthy on the field, Jalen Hurts slinging the rock, you know he can be productive. You love the spike weeks too. You love that you know there's going to be a couple times he's going to get you 25, 30 fantasy points and also hover in the 20s, 15 to 20 range multiple times throughout the year and really give you that production. We do get down weeks every so often. That's part of the volatile standpoint of his production profile as we're seeing here due to having competition in offense, game scripts, and everything else. But again, those top-end weeks win you weeks. He wins you games. That's what you want to see. He's not just clogging your lineup here with just a ho-hum performance, 12 points, 11 points, getting you a good average. He's really going top end or he's going down end, which is good to see. Next, Jalen Warren, RB41 in ADP. Rose up a few spots in ADP over the last few weeks. Been looking good in preseason. Been looking good in training camp. He looked good last year. 11th in the league in yards per touch. 5th in yards created per touch last year. He's got upside if something happens to Harris. Also could be stealing some touches from Harris. And at that price tag, RB40. You're talking about like your RB4 price range. Or cheaper. He's just a guy on the back end of your depth chart seeing what happens right now. Or you could draft 0 RB, hero RB, and he's at that range where you're just slamming running backs in your draft. And you're just hoping he hits. Or just hope he gets touches and gets you some production. Touches equal production at the running back position, and if you're more efficient, if you're more explosive, then that'll lead to more points and more production. But if you're getting touches and you're getting workload and you're just ho-hum and you're just average, and Jalen Warren and offensive line, maybe they're not kicking it for a few weeks and they're just on the field, you know what? He's still going to give you production. It's still going to happen, and we're in line to see some sort of workload here for Jalen Warren. Good price tag here for RB41 ADP. And if you're wanting late round running backs, he's the guy to look at. He's the guy to think of because he's going in his year 2. Looked good year 1. Really climbed the depth chart last year. He's been used in the pass game. They used him a lot in training camp last year. They like to use him in the passing game. They like to have their running backs be multifaceted so they don't have to have a running back for this and a running back for that. Jalen Warren could get more opportunity than realize that something happens to Najee Harris. And just the touches alone could allow him to be productive. He's in a spot for that. He's climbing the depth chart. He's earning more opportunity. We got to see what happens with that. But at the price of admission, you're not paying much to figure that out. Next is Tyler Lockett, wide receiver 30 in ADP. He's climbed like 3 spots over the last few weeks, which isn't too bad. Jackson Smith and Jigba's injured with the wrist. They're saying he's going to be back for the start of the year. Sometimes day-to-day turns into week-to-week, and week-to-week could turn into month-to-month. So you really got to pay attention to his injury. You got to pay attention to the status when he comes back. Don't be too scared off of Jackson Smith and Jigba, but you just have to pay attention. Sometimes these timelines could be a little bit longer than expected. I think they said something about 4 weeks. Could be 5, could be 6, could be 3. You never really know. But Tyler Lockett is productive in his own right. 77 air yards per game, 23% target share, 30% share of the air yards last year. With how they move the football, with their passing targets in the offense, could relatively be very similar to that workload-wise. And the thing about Lockett, what everybody likes about him, is he's boom bust in fantasy, and the chart down there proves it. It shows it. He was a little bit more stable last year because of Geno Smith, but we may go back to those boom bust timelines once Jackson Smith and Jigba starts kicking it, because you can really get him deep downfield, throw him deep targets, get him some volume. You connect on a couple deep targets, and you're going to get a green candlestick out of him. You're going to get a few of those throughout the year. Do you want the volatility? Or do you want to chase those upside games? What do you want? Are you willing to risk those red candlesticks, those low-end games? Or are you wanting to chase those green candlestick games, those top-end production games? Because he can get you 30 points in a game. He can really go nuts in a game. He's good for that. He can win you 3 to 4 matchups a year, maybe more, depending on what's happening and how stable his production is. But he is a wide receiver you're buying at wide receiver 3 price tag, mid-tier wide receiver 3, not just top end, but a guy you're catching at a discount. In your home leagues, you're probably catching him a little cheaper even. It may be. I could see that happening because this is best ball ADP. You're trying to stack and all that stuff. You might be catching him at wide receiver 35, which is where his price range was at around the Jackson Smith and Jigba injury. So you might catch him a little cheaper. And with that price tag, which we're guessing which will be at in a standard league, something you want to look at, something you want to think about. Next, Rashad Bateman, wide receiver 46 in ADP. He's free, he's cheap, he's got upside. Come back from the Liz Frank, but we've covered the clips on that. He looks good. He looks like he's back. He's ready to roll. Should be ready to produce early in his career. Zay Flowers is there. The offense has been wonky. Mark Andrews on any given week can give you 25 to 40% share of the targets. That is the big scare tactic here, and that does worry me to some degree, but I'm not worried at wide receiver 46 price tag. I'm not worried at all. I'm worried at wide receiver 30. I'm worried at wide receiver 28, 25. Wide receiver 46, I'm taking that investment. You're talking about a first-round wide receiver. We know he's talented. He just hasn't been on the field much. With Lamar Jackson, 1.95 yards per route ran, and that's high-end efficiency there. He hasn't been with Lamar Jackson that much on the field. Sometimes Jackson's been out. Come back from a Liz Frank, that's a little bit iffy, but I'm less iffy at this price tag. And it's according to price in fantasy. And you might catch him a little cheaper. As Zay Flowers gets more notoriety throughout the offseason, preseason, Bateman's price should drop a little bit, which is good. You might catch him around wide receiver 50. You're catching him about wide receiver 5 to wide receiver 4 price range right now, which is solid. It's a free square on a first-round wide receiver with talent in a low-volume offense, and he could get targets. I expect volatility. I expect some up-and-down games because how these game scripts have been ran these last few years. Todd Monken's there, maybe a faster-paced offense, creating a few more targets per game. Some of that could go to Bateman. Bateman's also going into another year of his career. This offense might cook more in the offense. Now they got 2 good wide receivers plus Beckham. It's going to be fun to watch with these Ravens, but he's cheap. Now, at wide receiver 37, we're talking about Jahan Dotson. I think this is a good value for him. A first-round wide receiver going into year 2. He's been looking good in preseason. Terry McLaurin's hurt now. So now we're looking at Jahan Dotson taking a step forward with Howe. Howe's been looking good too under center. And he's been productive. During his rookie season, he had 5 games with 6 or more targets and averaged 14.6 points per game in his last 5 games last year as a rookie. So technically he's broken out. Also dealt with injuries. Probably would have had a huge season last year if he didn't do that, didn't have to deal with that. And then he would have been much more expensive, probably a wide receiver 20 or so, as people were speculating him to break out. He's on the Commanders. Players on the Commanders kind of get slept on a little bit. Jahan Dotson, though, has some talent. Looks like he's going to get a buffet of targets. Looks like he's going to earn them. He's good. Good hands. Good out of the slot. You want to get money targets as well. I think this is a good value for a player like this. Going to wide receiver 36, though, he's jumped up in ADP a smidge. It's Gabe Davis, and he's a boom-bust player. He is your typical boom-bust wide receiver and one of the best offenses in the league. When you draft him, you're drafting a piece of the Bills' offense. You're drafting a player who gets air yards. He had 90 air yards a game last year and averaged 28% share of the Bills' passing air yards, which is something you want. You want a large percentage of air yards in these fast-paced teams that throw the football. They love this. He injured his ankle in week 1, had to deal with that for a bit. Boom-bust player, gets downfield, targets goes his way. Fun to watch. It's hard not to go with Gabe Davis this year because he was much more expensive last year. And now he's a little bit cheaper, and he's probably priced accordingly to what you're going to get. Those are the 10 players we're talking about today. Who are you trying to get in your leagues? Who are you trying to draft? Who are you trying to sneak away? Who are you hoping that falls to you? We're looking at players every day here on the channel, so that's why you need to hit that subscribe button, because we're going to find those values. We're going to talk about them top-end players, them ballers, those guys that are going to be sleepers, and everybody in between. That's why you need to hit that subscribe button. Stop missing out. I want to thank you for watching. Catch you on the next video.